There was a time when Sarah Ferguson, or Fergie, as the press loved to call her, was the beating heart of royal drama and resilience. She wasn't born into royalty, but she married into it with that unmistakable spark. Bright, impulsive, emotional, and endlessly human. For years, she played the part of the Duchess with her trademark laugh, her big personality, and her fierce love for her daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie. Through divorce, scandal, and humiliation, Fergie always said the same thing. "As long as I have my girls, I can survive anything." And for a long time, that was true. They were inseparable, a trio bound by loyalty and laughter. Even when the tabloids mocked her, even when royal insiders dismissed her, Fergie could count on two constants: her daughter's devotion and Prince Andrew's friendship. Yes, the world found it strange that she lived with her ex-husband. But for Sarah, Royal Lodge was more than a home. It was proof that despite everything, she still belonged to the story of the monarchy, until the day that story finally broke. When King Charles made the decision to strip Prince Andrew of his remaining honors, the move sent shockwaves through royal circles. But inside Royal Lodge, it hit even harder, because when Andrew fell, he didn't fall alone. That sprawling estate, their shared refuge for years, was suddenly no longer theirs. The message was clear. The era of quiet protection was over. Insiders revealed that while Andrew was quietly offered private accommodation elsewhere, Sarah's position was left uncertain. No formal residence, no clear royal safety net, just questions and silence. For Fergie, losing Royal Lodge wasn't about property. It was about identity. It was where her family memories lived, where she had rebuilt her sense of belonging after divorce and public ridicule. But now, it was gone, and with it, the last piece of the royal world that once defined her. Still, Sarah Ferguson has never been one to vanish quietly. In the midst of it all, a close friend came forward with a rare insight into her mindset. According to media personality Lizzie Cundy, Fergie's priorities now are simple and deeply human: her children and her grandchildren. She only cares about them now, Cundy shared. That's her heart. That's her healing. It painted a picture of a woman retreating from chaos to find peace in her family, not as a duchess, not as a public figure, but as mum, the warm, funny, fiercely loving woman her daughters always adored. But even that sanctuary, it seems, is beginning to shake, because while Sarah wants to rebuild quietly, her daughters are struggling to make sense of what's left. Behind palace walls, sources describe tension, confusion, and most painfully, disappointment. Beatrice and Eugenie have always been protective of their parents. They defended their father when others turned away. They stood by their mother through every headline, every humiliation, every comeback, but this time, something feels different. A friend of the York family recently revealed that for the first time, the princess's faith in their mother has begun to waver. Not because they stopped loving her, but because they can no longer ignore the consequences of her choices. One insider said something that stunned even seasoned royal watchers. "I think they are more disappointed in their mother than their father." Let that sink in. More disappointed in Fergie, the woman who has always been their safe place, than in Prince Andrew, whose scandals nearly broke the monarchy's public image. If true, it marks a heartbreaking turning point. But where does that disappointment come from? Insiders suggest it's not just about recent events, it's about years of repeated patterns. The interviews, the money troubles, the constant returns to the spotlight that so often ended in embarrassment. And now, rumors swirl that Sarah is considering a major interview, one designed to set the record straight and tell her truth. It would be her attempt at redemption, a chance to reclaim her story once again. But her daughters, sources say, are terrified of it. They've seen what happens when Fergie steps back into the media storm. They know how quickly sympathy can turn into ridicule. And after decades of defending both parents, they're exhausted, emotionally, publicly, and privately. For the first time, the girls are said to be urging their mother to stay silent, to rebuild quietly, to stop trying to explain and simply start again. Still, Fergie is not a woman who hides easily. Her entire life has been played out in front of the cameras, and those close to her say that part of her still craves the validation that comes from being seen, being heard, being understood. But what happens when the very thing that once saved you, public attention, is now the thing your own children wish you'd walk away from? That's the tragic paradox of Sarah Ferguson. She's a woman defined by survival, yet haunted by the cost of being visible. She's loved deeply, fought fiercely, and fallen publicly, over and over again. And through it all, her daughters were always there to catch her. Until now, because growing up means seeing things clearly. And those who've spoken to the York family say Beatrice and Eugenie have reached that difficult age, not in years, but in understanding. When the fairy tale fades and the truth begins to sting, they still adore their mother. But they no longer see her as the flawless protector of their childhood. They see her as she is, human, flawed, fragile, and sometimes her own worst enemy. So what happens next? Fergie stands at a crossroads. One path leads to quiet, to peace, privacy, and a life built around her grandchildren rather than the press. The other leads back to the spotlight. Risky interviews, new headlines, another round of public scrutiny. Whichever she chooses, one truth remains. Her daughters will be watching. And their forgiveness this time may depend not on what she says, but on what she doesn't. Because for all her resilience, Sarah Ferguson now faces the one challenge she's never truly conquered: restraint. The courage not to speak. The strength not to explain. The humility to simply begin again. Perhaps that's the lesson hidden inside this royal tragedy, that love, no matter how loyal, can't always protect us from consequence. And maybe, just maybe, the only redemption Sarah Ferguson will ever truly find won't come from the crown, the cameras, or the crowd, but from the quiet forgiveness of her daughters. Her daughters.